For this next tutorial, I'm going to show you how to make a sliding knot button. And they're very handy when when you have a large button, like this one's about 1 inch long. So if you have a large button like this, you need a large loop. But I have this new and cool way to make the loop, but then, close it. And what I use is faux leather. So you can use leather and then you switch over to a faux leather for the sliding knot. So what you do is, I've already measured out enough leather for, I'm making a 16-inch. So the way you set it up on the board is you put a peg at 0, 8, 13, and 16, and then your clips. And, of course, that's because you're not working linearly. You're working, since it is a smaller board, then you have to work, going around. So what I do is I clip this. Well, no, first let me put my button on. You want to slide your button and then start wrapping. So you wrap, and then when you get to the peg, you just make your curve on the button and then string back around. And just make sure that it's nice and not like this even. And then make sure and go back through the button again. There, we got it. Okay. So then you come back around and then you loop that, come back this way. And then on this last one, you do not need to go back through the loop of the button because we're going to be making our coil knot and then trimming off this part anyway. And for the coil knot, I'm not going to be using glue for this demonstration, but I do like either the GS Hypo Cement or the clear Gorilla Glue. Just the only thing when you're using those glues, you just have to make sure and let them dry properly. Just, after you make the knot, just leave it alone for, 24 hours or so and then come back and then trim it. Because sometimes I've gotten impatient and the knot just kind of slid off. So what I do is I just make my coil knot like usual. So you just take your leather and you wrap maybe 3 or 4 times. Since this is pretty thick, I'm going to make it a 4 wrap. So, and then you take your, excuse me, your peg out and then you feed one in one way and then the other one the other way. So let's do that. And then you don't tighten it here. Just put your glue right in here and then slide your knot over the glue and then tighten. And if your cords are too short, you can always get some pliers and then, to help, pull and tighten. So then you make your other coil knot right here. So let's take let's be exact here. I'm going to go with 7. It might be too short, but I don't know. Sometimes, leather, because sometimes I used to try to be very exacting, and then some batches of leather were a little bit thinner than others, and then so we know that 7's not going to work. So I'll go 8 this time. Maybe I think 9. I'm going to do 9. I just want to be on the safe side this time because this is pretty thick leather. Okay, so let's do this. 1, 2, 3. Okay. And then I see that this one's getting shorter, so I'm going to wrap once more with the other side. Okay, oops, don't want that. Let's get back on there. Okay. So this side goes in this way and the other side goes in the other way. All right. Put your glue, slide it over, and then tighten. So let's just... So I'm just going to pretend that this has a glue. So let me get my scissors. And what I really like to use to trim this leather are cuticle scissors, because they just get really like close, and but be really careful because they're sharp. But they do an excellent job. So I'm just going to trim off all those excess parts. So anyway, so we have our multi-strand here. Now we need to add the sliding button loop to finish the necklace. So what I do is I find, either black works for me, or I get like a matching color. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to make a moose knot. So I take a pin and a clip an inch apart on the board, and I am going to make. So what I did was I just fed the cord through the loop, and I'm going to make a just your regular moose knot. So I'm going to go like 1, 2. I'll go twice. Feed that through, tighten, and then slide that down. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to put a sliding knot on this part. So let's turn this over, and let's get 2 clips. So you just clip this in, and now you take about, I would say about 5 inches of cord, or 6. Let's go 6 since it's thicker. So now you're going to make a coil knot. But this one's going to be different than the other one that we made, because on this one, it's actually, these are glued on. This one's going to slide. And I'm going to show you the trick to like making it work. So you put one end goes in one way, this side goes in the other way. Let's get that. All right. So kind of squeeze it, tighten, squeeze it, and tighten, tighten. And now the important part is you have to check the tension. Just make sure that it's not too loose. Oh, very important. Okay, this is the leftover strand from the coil knot. Always put a knot on it just to mark it. So, because what's happened with me a couple of times, because you have to slide this down to melt it, and sometimes I've accidentally cut the wrong one. So this is the one we're going to be cutting. So, and the reason I'm sliding it away is because we need to melt those ends into balls. And it burns, sometimes it melts this part of the leather, but since after we melt them, we have to slide it down anyway, and that part is going to get cut off. So after you, let's see, make it tight as you can, because after you make the balls and then you run it back and forth, it's going to loosen up a little bit, okay? So that's important to know. So don't think, oh, it's too tight. Don't worry about that yet. Just make it as tight as you can. Okay, now for the fun part. Okay, so now you're going to cut that off. You're going to leave about maybe 1/8. Let's see if we can get that focused. Okay, about 1/8 of an inch. Cut. And now we're going to melt that part into a ball. But the important thing is, and I'm so guilty of it, don't tap it down. Because if you tap it down, it creates sharp edges, and then that is going to rub on this cord, and it's going to like cut it. So let's see if we can do this. Okay, so you just get a lighter and just keep your eye on it. Okay, this is what you want. See that? And see how it kind of like melted part of that cord too. So, okay, so now that one's hardened. Okay, now we're going to do the other side. Okay. So I have this tip where if you're using, let's say you're using a thinner faux leather and you don't want it, or for whatever reason, let's say you made this too short and you need to make these little like balls, and you know that it's going to burn your cord or melt it. One thing that I have done and it's worked is kind of like what I do is I take a piece of metal. Like in here, I mean, this is probably not a good idea, but I'm going to show you anyway. So in this case, what I do is I use a single edge razor. I just like put it right at the bend and just real gently hold it, just like that. And then I come in here and I cut. And see how it's like a guard, so that my other cord doesn't melt. And this, you would do resort to this only if you cut this part too short. In other words, you don't have any room to cut anything off. All right, so let's remove that. Oh, don't touch it. And see how it's sticking out a little bit, but that's okay, because once you like start like moving it back and forth, it's gonna tighten. I mean, it'll loosen up a little bit. So see how that slides now? So see, so now you have this sliding knot. So the next thing I'd like to do is I like to put like a stop knot. Or I mean, there's a bunch of different things you could do. You could like do a macrame binding knot here and then fluff it out. That would probably look cool. Oh, maybe I should do that. Let's try that. So you want to make that fluffer, like you need to be sure that your button will go through, like, okay, so that works. All right, so I'm gonna do something different. So right here, I'm gonna make a binding knot. So let's pick a color. I guess I'll just pick this brown since it's handy. So usually with macrame binding knots, I use a waxed cord and I just make it really tight. So there's a top, bottom, top. And honestly, what I'm showing you right now, I've never done this before. I just got the idea, so. Because usually what I do is I put like a knot on each side and then I put like a bead and then another knot and then cut it off. So, all right, I think that's enough. So it's nice and tight. You trim here, here, and I'm going to trim right there. And see, so now this knot won't come off, and you need to come in here and melt these ends. Tap, tap. And tap, tap. All right. So now I'm going to, I love fluffing this stuff. Okay. Let's get a nice fluff. And if you have trouble fluffing, you could always use whoops. Whoa. My magnet. I have magnets everywhere. You can use like a knotting awl to help like separate the little fluffer things. Okay, so this should be ready. All right. So here's your button. You put that in just like that and slide your, ooh, I like it. Oh my goodness. Okay, let's get rid of all this stuff. All right, so that's how you do that. I mean, in this, you have, I mean, like I said, this is just one of the options, but sometimes you can just like separate them, but I like that. That looks really cool. So, see, so now you don't have that gigantic loop because you slide this thing over and unbutton it. Isn't that cool? Oh, I love this.